Hello guys, here is a tutorial video for Warhammer Age of Sigma Champions. I did went through the tutorial and kind of explained how this game worked if you're looking to try this game but are a little bit confused about the mechanics. This guide will kind of get you up to speed where you can play a full game of Sigma Champions and kind of understand what's going on. Let's get started. All right. So let's get started. Main thing, you get 4 champions in play, and champions can be either warriors or wizards. Sometimes you can have both. In my last deck I had a card that was both warrior and wizard. So what their classes are determines what units or spells you can play. So warriors play units, and then wizards play spells. So if you have a warrior, units, wizards, spells. Kind of simple stuff. Usually you do get to place your units. Like you can see in the previous, I had a unit that takes 1 less damage from enemy minions. So I do want to place that unit in front of an enemy warrior, because warriors play minions. So there is some strategy based on minion placement, but in this tutorial they're not going to go into that. This is repeating what I said. Warriors play unit cards. So I have 3 warriors here. You can see by this little icon. Warrior, warrior, warrior. And then the wizards have this icon here. So that's kind of, if you're just looking, you can kind of see which class they are if you don't know. So we're gonna play our unit here, in front of our warrior. That's the strategy here. So now this is the main mechanic of this game, the corners. So if you look at this, you can see there's in the top left of the corner there's a 1 here, and if you read the ability, it says that it's going to do its damage to your opponent. So this is whatever number it is. So it's going to do 1 damage to your opponent, and this card will increase this damage by 1 if the highlighted champion, and the highlighted champion is the champion in front of it. So this is the unit, whatever the dot is the unit, and then the color, the red, is enemy champions. It's highlighted. If it's green, then it's highlighted friendlies. So it's just a color scheme. So this will deal 1 initially, but deal 2 if the highlighted champion costs 7 or more, and you can check that. So it's kind of saying whatever I'm saying right now. You can check that by clicking on the enemy. So this one, this green value is its cost. So it costs 2. So I don't believe he has any like 7 cost units, but we can check that either ways. This is saying the same thing. Wizards can deploy spells, so we're gonna play the spell here as well. So same ability. It does nothing initially, right? X means nothing, but then so for the turn you played it does nothing, and then the next turn it does nothing, and then the turn after that, that's when the effect triggers. So if you look at it, it's damage to your opponent. So it's a very simple card. It does nothing for 2 turns, but then hits you for 7. Hits your opponent for 7. Is how it worked. So same thing. So you see every turn the cards will rotate to the left, right? So you can see this rotated to the left. It does its ability 1 damage to your opponent. This does its ability nothing because it's an X, right? So he played a unit here. So we're gonna take a look at this unit. So it has a 1, a 3, a 1, and a 3. So it has 2 different effects. So the 1 corner is the first corner. So the first corner, this ability will trigger. It does 1 damage to yourself, so it hits you for 1. But then in corners 2 and 4, so it will hit your opponent for 3. So it deals 6 damage overall, but you take 2. So that's kind of the power level of this card. It also has an extra ability, Last Stand, which is basically if this card gets removed, it will deal 2 to your opponent. So removed is not is different from like using all of its abilities. So let's say it rotates completely and then goes to the discard pile. That is not Last Stand. Last Stand is if I cast an ability, or he casts an ability to remove this card, then its last stand ability will trigger. So in general, last stand doesn't trigger unless it's like forced. So it's just like a caveat, like a little like extra, like it basically says don't remove me, or but because I'll deal damage anyways, so every turn we have 2 actions, right? So you can either play cards like we did the first turn, or we can draw cards. So if you can either decide to play 2 cards, play 1 card, draw 1, or play 0 cards, draw 2. So this is just a mechanic. So if you know that your opponent has no cards in their hand, they're gonna draw next turn. So it kind of allows you to kind of predict what your opponent can do and play around that. So we're gonna do nothing, and then we're gonna draw 2. Yeah. So we drew a spell and a minion here. So here, his turn, it rotates. We take 3, and then he's playing a spell, the same spell that we played. So in 2 turns, he's gonna deal 7. So here it deals the final 1, and then finally the spell triggers and deals the 7. So champions that are playing cards that have a card on the board, they're classified as engaged. So they're classified as in use, and you can't stack multiple spells or multiple units on top of a unit that already has a spell or a unit. So you can't play, okay, I'll play my spell, I'll play another spell on the same unit. You have to play it on different units, or different champions, or so. So we only have 1 warrior in this deck, 1 wizard in this deck, so we cannot play another spell while this spell is in use. So, but we do have multiple warriors, so we can play multiple warrior cards. So here we're taking a look at this card. Our opponent from the last game uses against us. When you play it, so if you are paying attention, right, it will deal nothing when you play the card, but then the next turn it will deal 1, and then the turn after that it will deal 2, because it's damage to your opponent. Now, it has an extra ability where it will deal more damage if your opponent is healthy. Above 20 life is relatively healthy. So it's a good unit to use early when you can take advantage of it, because it's really powerful early. It essentially does 7 damage early, but then later on in the game it gets a lot weaker, only 3 damage. So pretty powerful unit in the right situation. So we're gonna drop it here, and then we can't play this spell, so we're gonna end the turn. So we play 1 card, and then we're gonna draw 1 card here. Drew another minion. So here, his ability triggers, right? If you remember, that 1 will deal damage to himself, so he's getting fairly low. And then he didn't play anything. He just drew 2 cards. So here we deal 1 to him, and then our cards, once they fully rotate, so you can see the spell, there's 4 corners, right? If they rotate to an empty corner, that's basically being exhausted and going to discard. Also, you can, if there are 4 corners, right, then after it rotates through the whole card, then it's exhausted and it discards. So it's either an empty corner or the whole thing, based on if they have all the pieces contained here. So like this card, same thing, it only has 3, so once it rotates to the 4th corner it will exhaust. Same here though, this has all 4 pieces, so it has to go through all 4 and then it'll get discarded. But we can't see your life. Sure, okay, I will change that real quickly since you mentioned it and it is somewhat important. Fine, you can see my life. Alright, so it's saying we got this. It's just giving us encouragement to beat our opponent here. So it wants us to drop this here. The reason it's at 2 health, so next we don't actually have to play this card if you pay attention, because this card will deal 2 next turn, and he's at 2 health, so he will die even if I didn't play this card. It's just an extra thing that I can do. right? So now it's giving us an option since the game is already over. In this little tutorial, if there was like there are other things to do. Like I'm not necessarily dead if there was like a human enemy, but the AI is not gonna play to win. Essentially, it's gonna die. So what we can do, we can either end our turn, draw a card, or we can play this spell here. I'm gonna just play the spell just cause we can, and then it will end our turn, and then his turn will activate. He will deal 7 to us and 3 to us. So we take 3 here and we take 7 here. So if he had a 2 damage card in his hand, which is very possible, he could actually win, but he's not going to do that because he's a nice AI, giving us the win here. And so that is like the basics of the game. If this is all you knew, you can play this game out. However, there are more features to this game, little intricacies that make the game a little bit more complicated that we will be going over in the next tutorials. But that is the basics of the game, the corners, and making sure you play your spells with your wizards and your units with your warriors. Alright, so now they are going to introduce a new feature, a new wrinkle to the basic smorking, doing whatever feature, quests. Now, we have 4 champions, right? Wizards, combination of wizards and warriors. All of them have their own quest feature with their champions. And completing these quests gives you powerful game-swinging abilities. So each unit has different quest objectives. There are multiple objectives. It's not just these 4. There's heal, like the opponent has a heal objective, and there's like remove a card objective. There's lots of different objectives, but they're very easy to identify once you play the game enough. All right, and completing each unit has 4 objectives. That does not change. All of them have 4. And once you complete their objective, it will rotate. Just like the card abilities, the quest objectives will rotate, meaning that you've completed that first or second or whatever step. When all are completed, they complete their quest and they show a powerful blessing card. So you get to choose the blessing cards that you have in your deck. They're not locked to champions. So you get to, and they are randomly placed under your champions. So it's not like this champion has this specific blessing. You get to choose your blessings, and then they are randomly shuffled under your champions. And then once you complete the quest, you reveal whatever blessing is under the champion. So they're gonna try to complete a quest for us. So this, if you click here, you can see what the quests are. So this is deploy a unit, this is use an ability, this is deal damage, and this is deploy a specific type of unit. You can see it's the same deploy a unit quest, but it has the type of unit on top, right? So that's kind of how you know. It's like same here, this is deploy a beast unit, same deploy a unit, but it has the beast tag on top. And this is deploy a spell, and then I believe he has a heal, but can't click on his thing while it's showing us the details. So we're gonna play our unit here. It's gonna rotate the quest 1 forward. So here it rotates 1 forward, and we've completed the first stage of our 4-part quest. Now it has a next quest to use an ability. So just so happens randomly, that we have an ability card in our hand. Wow, how convenient. So here we're gonna keep progressing his quest, play an ability on top. Cards can only complete 1 step per turn. So let's say you have a card that is like a unit. They have like two summon a unit in a row. If you play a unit, it won't trigger both. A card can only trigger one quest objective per turn. However, in supplemental turns, they can one card can trigger multiple objectives. So you see this has a deal damage ability, right? This same card, even though it completed the first quest, can also complete that quest, because it will be a different turn. So we're going to use this ability here, move the quest forward. Just want to make sure that everyone's understanding what's going on. We are playing our abilities to complete our quests. Completing quests, good, important is what they're saying. So the opponent is playing his own cards, also progressing his quest here to play a spell, and also progressing his quest here to play a unit. So he's also working on his quest. He's not stacking like we are. We are stacking our quest on one to trigger the quest immediately, but he's like progressing both of his slowly. Alright. So the units rotated as normal. It dealt 1 damage, but our quest was dealing damage, so it completed that quest automatically. So we're 1 quest away from activating its blessing here. So I need to deploy a Stormcast unit, but as it's engaged, I can't stack a unit on top of it. This is not the class for that. So we're gonna pass because we can. That's the only thing we can do right now. So we're just gonna pass and draw 2. How convenient, we drew a Stormcast unit. How apt. Anyway. So here it triggers, it deals 2 damage, and only 1 turn to go, and this Liberator will be exhausted, allowing us to play our another unit and complete our quest. So each of our champions can quest at the same time as our opponent did. So he wants us to use our ability to complete this quest here. So we're going to cast our ability. It will deal damage, and then it will forward the quest, because our quest is to deal damage here. So we're just completing that quest, and then we're going to save this last card to complete our Knight's Azeros. I've never read his name out loud. His quest. So we're just going to pass here. He played a unit to it did something. I'm not going to pay attention. Alright, so he's playing a bunch of cards, whatever. So this does nothing when it's summoned, and then it deals 3 damage. So this is let's take a, while we're here, let's take a look at our opponent's cards. So this ability, it's a unit, so it has to be played on a warrior card. It will deal nothing this turn, but then it will deal 3 damage the turn after. And it has an ability, when it enters place, it can remove a highlighted unit. So you can see this is the unit. It can remove a unit to the left and right of it. And you can see the color is green, indicating that it's a friendly unit. So this card can only remove friendly units. Why is that a thing? We will find out later. But it will deal 3 damage on its turn, but it will also gain 2 health. So this is like a 5-point swing. It will deal 3 plus heal 2. So a pretty powerful card. Very quick to activate as well. It triggers its damage the next turn. Now this card is very basic, standard, long damage. So it deal 1 damage initially, then the turn 1 damage, then 1 damage after, 1 damage after, and then on its last turn it will deal 3 damage. So total it deals 6 damage. Very powerful. I don't know if this card is regarded as powerful, but very consistent damage dealing unit here. So here we are finally going to trigger our quest here. We're going to activate our last quest. As we can see, we need to play a Stormcast unit. which we do have. Actually, both of these are Stormcast, so it doesn't really matter what we play, but we're going to follow instructions and play the card they indicate here. So here we play the card, and it will trigger the last quest. Once it's done, we get the blessing. Now, this card is 4 damage to your opponent, but if the enemy is disengaged, meaning that if the opponent in front does not have a spell or a unit, it will deal 5 extra damage, 9 whole damage. So that's a really powerful blessing. It basically deals 4 or 9 damage based on when it gets triggered. And it basically won us this game outright. So very powerful blessing card here. It triggers me that it's called Daemon and not Demon. Yeah, I don't care. But I can see that triggering. All right, so that we have so with the first tutorial we went over the basics. With this next tutorial we went over quests and how to use them. Now with this last tutorial we will be going over extra abilities that can be done during a turn that is not based on cards, just heroic abilities and things of that nature. Whew. Way more talking than I'm used to. I'll tell you what. So they're going to be talking about interesting interactions between cards. Let's get started with some damage. So we're going to start off doing something normal. We're deploying our unit. We can see we're moving the quest along, huh? Not ignoring the quest feature here. Now we have a mystic spell. So let's look at this card. It reduces damage received from highlighted enemies and allies. You can see that everything is highlighted. Green means highlighted, red also means highlighted. So every single board is highlighted. So this basically will reduce damage we take by 2 from everything on the board. And then the next turn by 1 from everything on the board. So it's a very powerful defensive spell. But we don't need it right now, so we're just going to pass. So he's playing the Pack of Bloodletters. We have seen this card before. It does 1 immediately and it keeps dealing more. Now this is a new unit we have not seen before. It deals 2 immediately, but then it has an extra ability to deal 1 to itself. So it deals 2 immediately, but then 1 to itself. It also has a last stand ability saying if this card gets removed, it will remove the unit in front of it. So, wow, our opponent is getting aggressive and has put a lot of damage on the board. Time for Mystic Shield. Dun dun dun. Wants us to use our spell here to reduce the incoming damage nicely. So it is a spell, so only our wizard can cast this ability, which we shall do. So bam, it triggers now, meaning that it will handle the incoming damage. It doesn't swap immediately. It just blocks 2. So as we end this turn, boom, this will rotate. It will deal 1, but we block 2. This will deal 2, but we block 2. So the damage isn't like stacked. It won't go like 1 to 3, and then we block 2. It will deal 1, block 2, and 2, block 2. So that's how it, it's regarded as quite very powerful. If your opponent has a lot of minions and stuff, you can use this and basically block everything. So saying we're in a good spot right now. We don't really have to change things up, so we're just gonna pass the draw 2. Yeah. So let's take a look at this card. We have not seen it before so far. It does nothing the turn it's played, but then it has 1, 1, and 4. So if we look, it says corners 2 and 3, it will increase damage done to the opponent from highlighted units. And if we look at the highlights, it's units to the left and right of it. So turn 2 and 3, while this is on the board, it will increase our damage by 1 from units to the left and right of it. And then on the last corner, the fourth corner, it will deal its damage 4 to the opponent. So this is a pretty good buff unit that does damage as well. Very, very solid. Yeah. And now it's going to talk about this card, not in as much detail as I did, but it will talk about it. It's great for increasing damage done by other units for a few turns before doing damage itself. Very apt description of this card. Okay, so it's telling us, it's showing us how the highlight feature works, how it shows its feature. Your lanes are green, enemy lanes are red. And it's showing which lanes are affected. So it's the left and right of whatever unit this is next to. So it wants us to deploy it. Since it doesn't boost the turn you played, you want to play this unit and then get your units that to deal damage right afterwards. So we're going to play this card first. Progressing the quest as well, keeping that in mind. Now, let's talk about removal cards. So it's not all about damage and healing and damage and healing and buffing and blocking. There's also some cards you say, you know what, I don't want to deal with your card or your spell right now. I'm just gonna remove it. Let's do that now. So this is a very one of the very I believe each class has like a not situational removal card. This is theirs. So it just removes any card you want. Oh, okay. It's somewhat situational in that if you have, this is like the only situational part of this card. If you have a spell, a wizard using a spell, you can't play this card on the wizard. However, if you have a unit, you can play it on warriors that have a unit on the field. But if you have a wizard with a spell, you can't play this card on it. But that's like the only limitation with this card. Other than that, you can cast it pretty much any time. So it will remove a highlighted spell or unit. And then if it was removed, it can rotate a highlighted ally minion one step backward. So that's rotating is like a little bit more complicated of a feature where if you rotate a card backwards, it will immediately use whatever its ability that you rotated is. So the last game, the arena game before this tutorial, we rotated a unit that dealt 4 damage back so that the next turn it could deal its damage again. So there are some very powerful uses with an ability like this, but right now we're not going to take advantage of that. So we're just going to remove this Blood Reaver here so that he doesn't get the damage off and he doesn't get the heal off. We're just going to remove it. So we're going to cast it here. If we had a unit in front, that's what gets rotated. So you have to be careful that you are, if you want to take advantage of the rotation, you have to have a unit in front of what you're removing. So here, this finally triggers, it deals with 3 damage, and he plays another copy of it, dealing 1 damage. So he's doing a lot of pressure here. He's also going to play Opportune Strike to deal 2 damage. So he's dealing a lot of damage to us. We're quite on the back end of this game here. Now it's time to capitalize, time to take advantage of our unit that we placed the turn before. So we can place some units and have the damage increase. So this unit attacks straight away, so we can take advantage of that unit immediately. And we're going to place it here. It usually does 1 damage. It will deal 2 if the cost is 7, but this is 1, so it's not going to deal extra. But it will deal an extra 1 from our unit in play. And we'll also drop our Decimator. It won't deal 1 immediately, right? X does means it won't deal anything. So even if it's buffed, it has an X, so it's not going to trigger any ability, even though it is buffed. He doesn't have anything to do, so we just draw. So here it gets buffed to 2 again, and here it gets buffed to 2. So we're dealing a lot of damage here. So even though we are out of cards, there is something else we can do once per turn. Heroic Acts. This is the last piece of the puzzle to make the game flow. Heroic Acts, something you can do even though you don't have extra cards in your hand. Now, not all heroes or cards have heroic acts. Some champions do, some don't. And some cards that you play from your hand do as well, but also most don't. So this champion here has a heroic act that allows us to rotate a Stormcast unit in a lane near him one step forward. That's enough to win this game here. So this is the creature. You can see the tag, the heroic act tag here. This little insomnia here, that's the heroic act ability. So if you look at your heroes or your opponent's heroes, you see that tag in any of their cards, you know they have a heroic ability attached to it. So this ability, rotate a highlighted Stormcast unit one step forward. So once you rotate a unit forward, ability will instantly trigger. So it will allow you to deal damage or heal or whatever the ability is on the card text. You can immediately use that. So we will be using that. We have 2 Stormcast units next to it. So it has to be one lane below. So we have 2 units here. So this ability, right, if we move it forward, it will trigger the 4 damage to the opponent, killing it. So that's how, so if we use it on this card, that's how we'd win the game. On this ability, right, if we move this 1 up, it will move to 2. So we'll deal 2 damage to it, not killing it, but wait, we will have this corner ability still in play to increase damage done to your opponent by 1. So even though this card technically wouldn't kill it by itself, with the extra buff from our Celestial Prosecutor here, it will give us enough damage to win the game. So you have 2 choices here. You can either buff the Prosecutor to deal 4, or you can be a little cheeky, buff the Decimator, deal 2 plus 1 from our Prosecutor to end the game. So I like the cheeky play, even though it's against an AI. We will buff our Prosecutor here, pushing it to 2, but getting the 1 from our friend here, ending the game. So that is Heroic Acts, the final piece of the puzzle to really understand most of these strategies in this game. Thank you for watching my tutorial. Hopefully I pay attention and post this later. All right.